Welcome back to another episode of Beyond Dimensional Podcast. We have jumped on our broomsticks today and we have a wonderful guest for you. I am one of your co-hosts. My name is Liz.
I'm Lori.
And we are here to talk through a very cool subject with a very cool woman. Her name is Kerri Scott. She is an astrophysicist turned metaphysician. What those terms really mean when we dive into it, I will find out, because God knows that's far beyond my scope of understanding. She is actually the founder of something called the Soul Selves Framework, a mindset tool that brings awareness to the patterns of behavior that keep us from becoming our authentic selves. And as a writer, researcher, grief advocate, and thought leader, Kerri helps spiritual seekers find profound self-love without the need for external validation by guiding their awareness inward. And if you feel like maybe that is like not related to astrophysics,
Wow, it's a tongue twister.
Astrophysics? Hello. Again, we talk about this is my coffee, guys. If you can't see, I'm chugging it right now. It does not sound related to astrophysics, but we are going to find out how those are connected. We're thrilled to have Kerri on the show today to help us dive into that kind of scientific understanding from her background and education there, and how that shaped her journey into the spiritual realm. Welcome, Kerri. We are so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here, for sure. Thank you.
Wonderful. So honestly, there's not a lot more to ask, really. Like, let's jump in. Like, talk to us about how you started your career, your understanding, your education in that science world, and how it led you here.
Yeah. Okay. So I do have a degree in astrophysics, a bachelor of science degree, and when I headed to university, I truly wanted to be a fashion designer, but they didn't offer fashion design at the university where my family lived close to here in Canada. But I guess astrophysics seemed to be like the next best choice or something.
I mean, not at all close together. I would have thought you said fashion design or acting or, one of those. But instead, you're like, let me pick the hardest, most complicated scientific thing ever.
Yeah, I just jumped right in. It took me a little while to figure out what it was that I wanted to study. But what happened is I was taking sort of like, I guess you could say, a gap year. And that was the year that the comet Hakutaki came through. It was a while ago. I'm dating myself probably with that. But looking up into the night sky and seeing this comet, it made me realize that I think at that point I'd probably already taken like a first level astronomy class and found it really interesting, really fascinating, and decided to pursue it more seriously as the sort of direction of my degree. And at the university I was studying at, they didn't offer a degree just in astronomy. What they called it was astrophysics. And so I enjoyed physics in high school and was always strong in sciences. That was always something I was interested in. And just dove right in and went for it. It was really such an interesting degree to take. And I was one of just a couple other women in the program. What I really, really enjoyed was the opportunity to look at look into or use the equipment that they had at the university. This huge telescope, I can't remember exactly, but the mirror itself was, I think, 1.4 meters in diameter, something like that. So they had access to these incredible, like, high-tech tools at the time. And, you got to look out into the universe and learn more about it. And one of the things that really intrigued me was this idea of spectrums, studying spectrums. And so looking at the composition of a star based on the light, there's so much you could read into it. It was like looking at a fingerprint, and you could tell what the composition of the stars was, or the planet, or all of these things. It was so fascinating.
That's amazing. Yeah. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh, it's kind of like one of the first things that you start to learn in terms of like how to measure distances, how you can get so much information about something in the universe just from the light, right? And how it's moving, what it's composed of, objects moving around it, and I mean it just goes on and on and on, and it's quite fascinating once you're able to start sort of dissecting all these little pieces. And another thing that fully interested me about this was radio astronomy, taking it to another wavelength, looking at a different wavelength other than light, and looking at the universe from a different perspective again. And after I finished my degree, this concept of looking at the universe and our reality from different wavelengths, from different perspectives, sort of was one of the first things that I explored as I was diving into more of the sort of metaphysical side of it. And going back to the intro, I used to call myself an astrophysicist turned metaphysicist, but recently I published my first book, and the editor that I was working with corrected me. So she changed from metaphysicist to metaphysician, which is the more appropriate use of the term.
Okay, define that for us, Kerri. What is a metaphysicist?
Physician. It's like a doctor of the meta world. Like that's
it kind of sounds like that, doesn't it? Right? It's just like I think somebody who studies metaphysics and like looks at the world from, again, a different perspective, not necessarily all of the things that are seen in our general understanding, but like we're looking sort of beyond
dimensional.
What is beyond dimensional?
Yeah,
love that.
Yeah,
there it is.
How to take the shot.
Are
Sorry.
also metaphysicians.
Look,
I love that. Now I sound fancy.
I know. We can put that on our resumes, guys. Open to work.
I love this.
Metaphysician.
Thank you. I can sound fancy and smart.
Mm-hmm.
Well, until someone talks to me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, she's not all that." Unlike Kerri, who's like brilliant.
Well, I appreciate that, but I'm not so sure about that. Anyhow.
I didn't study metaphysics or astronomy or anything with science in it. So
light waves.
Look, I have no idea. Transitioning from science, data, fact, evidence to now beyond looking at something that you have to believe in without hard proof.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, I think so the pivotal thing I would say in my own experience was grief. I shortly after I finished my university degree, I also lost someone that I like deeply, deeply cared for. And it just threw my world upside down for probably close to 20 years after finishing my studies. And I just had this sort of like, I was frozen. I call it frozen in my grief because I didn't realize I wasn't dealing with it. But because of the way that they passed, and because they were like an ex-boyfriend, and because there was mental illness involved, there were all these stigmas. And so I didn't ever talk to anybody about it. And I just kind of went through the motions and did my best to like live, and check all the boxes, so to speak. But I wasn't fully present with life in the way that we can be. I didn't have any sort of depth of understanding, and there was always sort of this niggling, right? Like of like there's more, and when somebody close to you dies, there's becomes this question of like, what else is there? And I think so much of that also is related to the study of astronomy or astrophysics. I mean, you're looking and you're questioning, and you're like, there's a beautiful quote. I wish I could remember the name of the person that wrote it. It's like, he's a poet, and he talks about like looking out into space and it calling you home, right? Like you want to return to part of yourself when you're looking out into that vastness. And I think that's what initially drew me to astronomy in the first place, really, was this deep longing to know who I was at my core, and know what else was out there, and like, is there life after death? What is that vastness that I think we all sense on a really, deep, intimate, internal level. And so being faced with that loss and all of that grief, when I finally like turned right towards it within myself and allowed myself to just sit with it and stay with it and honor it and start talking about it, then that's when I would say my sort of medical or metaphysician, the whole
I got it in your
journey.
mind. Sorry, my
Yeah,
fault.
no, fine. The whole journey of my own personal awakening really happened. So before this person passed away, when we first met, the relationship that we had was incredibly spiritual. It was like the first hug that we had, that we shared. It was sort of like this. There was this like green flash of light that just flew through both of our beings, and it was like it was a very sort of, again, like metaphysical experience,
Yeah.
and it was sort of like all of the cosmos opened up in my experience. And after that first hug, like I was never the same, and something shifted in me. And I call that, according to my Soul Selves Framework, that's a vital self moment. What I would call like a peak experience. And so all of a sudden I went from having a certain reality and understanding to realizing there's so much more. There's this whole other experience that I have access to. And I wanted to know more about that, but how do you get back to that experience? And I always sort of had this feeling that I needed that person in order to have that same experience and to be able to learn more about that and delve deeper into it. But as I explored my grief and looked deeper into it, what it meant and my relationship with it, and sort of started going down that rabbit hole, I realized that all of those experiences that I shared with him were actually all experiences that I had felt within myself.
Mm.
And so when I was able to sort of own that, I realized that the loss that I felt was equal to the love that I had for him. And that love was basically just the love that I was capable of having for myself. And so once I could claim that, then all of a sudden I could just have all of these experiences and just feel that amount of love again, and everything sort of opened up and turned, and this beautiful awakening really like took hold for me. So from my exploration of the Greek, I started to see these patterns emerging in other people's awakening stories. And in the books that I was reading, in social media, and in conversations that I was having. And I was able to sort of come up with what I call, pardon me, the Soul Selves Framework. And it's essentially 5 sort of levels of consciousness that we all move through on our own awakening journeys. And I do believe that there's more than 5, but 5 are the most, at this point, the most easy to understand and the most I'm familiar with. So I'll tell you quickly what they are. There's the bodily self, the vital self, the thinking self, the observer self, and then the transcendent self.
And where did you come up with that? Like, how did you
Yeah,
assign levels and names?
it's interesting. To be totally honest, and I'm realizing there's a bit of a pattern here, and this is gonna sound super quirky and super ridiculous, but
Great.
it's just,
We love that.
okay, good. So at the time when I was started writing, I was writing about my grief journey and my awakening journey, and I was thinking of ways to sort of grow my social media and like find connections with people. And so I'm like, I should come up with a quiz, because often people have these quizzes online. And I'm like, oh, I love personally doing quizzes, like personality tests and
Oh, yeah.
all of those things, right? And so I'm like, I'm gonna make a personality test for the soul. And so I had seen how these patterns were emerging. And so I honestly, it dropped into my understanding so quickly. I just like wrote it down one day and wrote this quiz and came up with these 5 categories, and realized like there's, the ego talking about a spectrum again. There's the ego on one side of the spectrum, and then there's these different soul selves that take you to the soul on the other side of the spectrum, just like a rainbow, right? Like there's a different color for each one, and it all comes from the same white light that's shining through that prism to, show you all of the different aspects of yourself that you exist. None are better than any others. I have to always preface that, because sometimes it seems like some would be less favorable than others, but it's all part of the same consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote this quiz and was sharing it online, and then the more I sort of sat with it, the more I realized it needed to be a book all on its own. And so I started doing more research and really filling out each of those categories. And then I realized along that process that not only is it just sort of describing the awakening journey, but we can be awakened in different levels of consciousness in different aspects of our life. So in terms of self-love, or in terms of your relationship with money, or in your relationships in general, or grief, you can look at each one of these aspects of our lives through this lens of the Soul Selves Framework and be at different places, and so once I was able to recognize that there are these variations within us, it just made it that much more exciting, and I was so much more motivated to explore it and share it. So
can I ask a question? The understanding of the light prism, I'm trying to use my very little knowledge of physics, astrophysics, understandings, and science, it's to make it make sense in my mind as well. So how do you conceptualize in your book, in the framework, and with this framework, do you conceptualize it scientifically, or do you kind of just speak about it in a very spiritual way for those who are understanding of this kind of metaphysical space, or do you describe it in any scientific way? Is my first question, and then I have more to come.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I do a little bit of everything, to be honest, because I understand it in a scientific way. I do share it in that way as well, but also just when I start getting into the details of each sort of level of consciousness, for instance, the bodily self is the first one, and I go into sort of the development of our ego. And when we're born, we don't have an ego. I mean, we're still what I call that pure light of our souls, right? We're that pure consciousness. And there's so many different names for the same thing. But if we think of it in terms of, again, like a light, it's just that pure consciousness. And there's nothing on that. We don't have any layers of identity yet. And so as we grow and learn and interact with people, there's sort of this whole series of development that create each of us as individuals, and we're all unique in that way because of the experiences that we've had, and what I kind of like to envision it as is all of our ego becomes what would be a good example, sort of like clay on top of this light. And so it blocks the light from shining outward, and becomes sort of just like a darker object. But then when we have what I call a vital self experience, which is the next level, somewhere that covering of the light kind of cracks open and allows, again, that light to shine through for maybe an instant or maybe a prolonged period of time. But again, it allows that soul, that light of our soul, to shine through. And so we sort of progress along, returning back to who we were when we were born, back to that pure light of consciousness, and sort of peeling back all these layers of ego that we've built up over time, and so on and so forth. So
it's interesting because we were talking to someone recently about how gifts show up, whatever type of gift a person has, right? And there seems to be a trend of a pivotal experience, moment, action where it's triggered or turned on for a lot of us. I mean, there's plenty of, people who were like, at 5, I was communicating with A, B, and C, or I could see, dead people or ghosts or whatever. That was not my experience, but there are people with that history. But a lot of us were like, this happened, and then all of a sudden this door opened. And that still sounds similar and aligns with what you're saying, because for you had an experience that was the trigger, right? So I think that's really interesting, because no matter who we talk to so far, it seems like there's a trigger, a moment, an experience, though they look different. I want to go back just for a minute when you said, you hugged this person. And I know, Liz, when I hugged you the first time, you were like, my whole life is transcended. I know, right? Right? I mean, come on. I mean, you're like, this is my twin flame on a non-romantic level.
Exactly.
I got to put that out there, because everybody thinks twin flame is only love, which is not true, but that's a different topic. Anyway, in that moment, right, leading up to it, had you had any like, oh, I'm pretty intuitive, or, oh, I see, A, B, and C, or, oh, I feel this? Like, was there anything that happened before that, and then this hug happened, and you felt a different type of energy, and it kind of switched things for you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm thinking, like, all through my childhood, my friend and I, we would sort of explore those realms of ghosts, and, use the Ouija board, and there was always sort of that understanding that there, was more to the experience than, we were told by our parents in school and all these things. And, I know, like with this person in particular, there definitely was like a series of events that in my own intuition, that were like so many flashes going on of like, yes, this person is who I'm going to be with at some point. And like, there was sort of this, like, this longing and this knowing, that was something that was going to be part of my experience at some point. And so when it came into reality, I think that flash of green light and that experience was sort of like a huge affirmation of all of the thoughts that I had sort of leading up to that. And then it opened up just so hugely that realm of experience that, it profoundly changed the person that I was. And I could never go back to being in any other, relationship that didn't hold that sort of same significance. And that was a challenge for a long time too. Like,
For sure.
Yeah.
So when that happened, I know you did mention that you were more spiritual just in practice, kind of, and in your understandings, even though you have this scientific background. In that moment, was there a feeling of skepticism and like, what the hell was that? That was weird, and fuck, how can I explain that? Or maybe I'm just seeing things, or maybe I'm tired. Or was it a feeling of total comfort and understanding, even if you did later have to be like, I wonder what that was, we should probably explore it? Or was it like complete warmth, welcomed all the things? Or did you have a moment of like, what's going on?
I think in the moment it was like there was sort of this shock, but like you said, it was more like a warmth and a welcome and a knowing and a returning, right? It was like all of our past lives that we'd experienced together and all of the future lives that we would experience together, sort of flashed in before us in this moment. And it was just a returning, and it was such a comforting and welcoming experience. I don't know that I really questioned it, because it was unlike anything that I've had experienced up until that point. And so I think it's one of the things that it's difficult to like explain in words, because it's happening on such a conscious level that like all of the reality, all of the ego, all of the identity is sort of lost. And you're just there, you're just in that moment, and you know that is home, right? That's what it's all about. But then the the sort of curse and the blessing about an experience like that is that we try and recreate it by, putting all those pieces together in the same way, or it becomes kind of like this carrot that we're chasing, and not realizing that it's not something beyond us or outside of us, but rather, again, it's always within us. And that is like that experience of bliss is our birthright. That's who we are. And to know that that is what we will, this is where it gets tricky, because we're seeking, and again, we're searching and trying to return to something that we already are, right? And it's just a matter of sort of allowing and stepping back into it, just to be return to, who we are at our core. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So do you know how many past lives you've had with this person?
Oh, I honestly, I don't know. I want to say it's almost infinite. Like it feels very full and very rich. And like, I think that was just like affirmed in our relationship, even though, like, honestly, to be totally like cut and dry, I think I probably spent maybe like 10 days in this lifetime with this person um, before he passed. And it was just such a rich and full experience that like the level of comfort that we shared could only be explained by like having had an experience, doing all that work in multiple lifetimes before, or something along that line. Like it doesn't make sense to me any other way, right?
Yeah. Well, we can cut this out, this part that I'm going to say out, but so he's telling me you've had the last 5 lifetimes together consecutively.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean there's not more, but he's focusing on the last 5 because I don't know if the number 5 is important, or if he's just like very clearly it was the last 5.
Yeah.
And he's also saying that his part of your karma was for him to come into this life, teach you what he taught you, what that experience taught you. And then the soul contract was like, I'm out after that. Like, I'm here in this life for a very specific purpose with you. Once that's done, I'm going to move on in whatever way. And it's hard to say that because it sounds simple, though the experience with him and his death and his passing was so tragic and painful. But all of that was something that you needed in this life, which makes a lot of sense because that transitioned you to where you are now, which is actually what you should be doing in this life. It is your purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with all of that, actually. And I love that about you, that you like bring that to the table, because these are all sort of like conversations that him and I have had, and in the sense that like there's definitely something that's happened in previous lives that has led to this experience, and it has made the grieving experience for me so much more understandable and so much more just important, and it becomes like that message of what my purpose is just becomes clearer and clearer and clearer, and those affirmations just come more and more often, and so even having opportunities like this to share it are just so nurturing to me, right? Like that it just is so satisfying. So yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and there was a moment right before this all happened, before you met him, probably recently, like maybe it was in the year prior, 6 months prior, 3 months prior, I don't know, where you consciously had the thought or said to yourself, what am I doing with the rest of my life? And I don't know if that was a dream. Like they're saying like it wasn't like something you're going to remember. It wasn't out loud actually or consciously, but like in your mind, you're like, I'm not on the right track. I'm missing something. I need to connect to something. There's something else. And then he came in.
Yeah.
So there's some connection to that. And the timing in which he showed up in your life was very strategic, for lack of a better word, and intentional and designed by the two of you before you came into this life together. So
yeah.
Anyway, I could read forever, and that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. But he was not going to let that go. He was like, you're going to have to please tell her this. It's important. So I can't help myself. I'm going to tell you.
I'm glad you did. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
I love Lori's interjection. Okay, well, you let us know if you'd like that to be totally cut, or if however you're comfortable, you can let us know later.
But I'm totally comfortable with it. Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's beautiful. Beautiful for sure. Yeah. I think that might be really vital to like the whole Beyond Dimensional podcast in general. So yeah.
We love that. But Lori is she likes to be very respectful and make sure that, she's like, he won't stop interrupting me and I have to tell you this, but it's also interrupting our podcast episode. So we gotta take a moment.
Sorry. Okay. Now we're off track.
No, I'll get us back. I promise, because I've been thinking about this.
I have to say though, real quick, like yesterday, I was remembering another podcast that I did with a woman and same thing, like he stepped in and she's just like, she had this experience of like, he's so excited. Like, she's like, I just feel just this overwhelming excitement that we're connecting. We're finally like, and it was a bit of a turning point in terms of my, allowing and like listening to that voice and really listening to him, being present. But he had to come through somebody else in order for me to like make that step and just allow it to be what it really was, right? So again, it totally makes sense.
So this is just another confirmation because she said it and now I'm saying it. So it's because his energy is very like, no, this is important. Like this needs to be said right now. Okay, all right, I got you. Like we're gonna do it. We're gonna say it. I'm gonna just throw it out there. So anyway, good. I love that. And also finally, and I'm telling him we have to stop communicating because we got to get on. But you see him and experience. He's saying smell him. I don't know.
That's funny. Yeah, that's a recent conversation too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So something about smell and smelling him, right? But pay attention because as these conversations happen and as you become more open, there'll be more experiences with him interjecting. Like someone will say something in a way that he would exactly say it. And you're like, like the only person I know that ever said this phrase was this person. And now this person in front of me saying it. And also dreaming and also like he's going to come in different ways, but it's going to be subtle at first in the sense of like that connection with phrases, scent, those types of things.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Lizzie.
No, it's fine. I'm about to go full skeptic and just I have to ask. So when you are talking about the understanding, and I use this word loosely, belief, of past lives and things like that, how are you equating that or explaining it to yourself, or have you just accepted that you're like, I know that this is what it is, right? For me, I don't have a scientific background at all, but my logical brain is like, is it, you were talking about the stars and the energy, the different types of energy and makeup that you see within the universe. Is it frequencies? I know I've heard a lot of people, in the science realm talking about, that emotional states actually have their own frequency, and the frequency of love is like the most pure, and we're actually all like over the spectrum a lot, but if we can all come to a point of frequency of love. And you were talking about prisms, similar to like the rainbow with prisms of light, like we all exist within the different prisms. Is this kind of how you start to understand this beyond dimensional kind of understand like situation? Is that how you equate it in your mind?
Yeah, I think most recently the way that it's really evolved for me is this idea of sort of fractals and like you say, love. Like often you hear people talk about love being what consciousness is, and it's a different kind of love, but like that's the only word that really can describe it in a way that is representative of the pure presence that it is. And behind each of our experiences is this whole and complete love or consciousness, and we're all just little fractals of consciousness experiencing itself. And so like one of the things that really helps me kind of sit with it in a peaceful way is this idea of like we can see all of the things that are changing in our reality, all of the the thoughts that are changing, all of the emotions that are changing, all of our outward experiences are constantly changing, but there's this part of us this witness, this observer that is not changing. And that unchanging observer within me is the same unchanging observer within you, Lori, within you, Liz, and within everybody. And so that's what unifies all of us. And that is, again, consciousness just experiencing itself in these fractals. And so part of this greater whole, and I don't know if I'm going to explain this very well, because this is sort of goes beyond my studies, but I know this is a lot of where math in particular takes things. It's like this greater whole is present in all of these infinite possibilities and all these fractals, and so it's just always experiencing itself, and all of these different experiences are different, but they're all, again, full and complete in and of themselves. And so they're part of this greater, I don't know, it just keeps going on.
It goes with what people say about the universe. Like, we're all part of the universe. We're all part of the energy of the universe. We're all one speck of the big picture or the big world or whatever we want to call it. So it makes sense to me from that perspective. The other thing I love, and this was a minute ago, we were talking about, things being within us, right? And that aligns very closely to my favorite study, which is Buddhism, and really understanding that, we are the ones, not anyone or anything, that is responsible, accountable, and able to really change our lives, right? And we'll meet people and have experiences that give us tools or help provide lessons if we're paying attention. But at the end of the day, it's all within us, which is what I love about your framework, right? And just really starting and peeling one layer at a time, because at the end of the day, those are all things that we have to work on in this life to get where we are meant to go. So that, of course, tees up your other book. Tell us about that.
Buddha's Closet, Cleaning Path to Enlightenment. Yeah.
Tell us about it.
It is just a really playful way of pointing at this unchanging experience within each of us, but in sort of a practical way of taking you through cleaning out your closet and literally changing your clothes and looking at how something makes you feel, and being, sort of training that observer part of us, training the witness to come up and be like, yes, this feels good. No, this doesn't feel good. Yes, I like this thought. No, this thought isn't serving me anymore. And so it just becomes like this metaphor for our mind. And then the closet is our mind and the clothes are our thoughts. And in the book, I lead you through this process of connecting again with that unchanging part of ourselves. Just super playful. So thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, it sounds almost like a combination. And we were just talking to a witch who casts spells and rituals, where you almost create this meditation manifestation ritual in a physical sense, so that people can remove just like all of the thoughts around it and put it into a very simple but physical action. It sounds very meditative, releasing, very healing, renewing.
Yeah. No, that's a beautiful way of looking at it. Actually, it is sort of meant to be meditation. And then I equate this idea of looking at your clothes and deciding which ones you're going to keep and which ones you're not as a meditation, because each item of clothing has so often all of these stories that are, tied to it, and all of these thoughts and all of these emotions, right? And if you're not mindful of that, and if you're not bringing your awareness to those thoughts, then you could be putting things back in your mind that don't serve you anymore. And so by being very conscious about what you're keeping and what you're not, it parallels to how we choose our thoughts and the awareness that we have, and how that's going to sort of propel us forward or potentially like hold us back. So absolutely. Yeah.
So it looks like we got to wrap this up, unfortunately. So we're going to have to talk to you again, because we've just scratched the surface, of course. But give our audience information on how they find you, and we'll include it in the show notes as well. But where do they find you, and info on you, and info about your books?
Yeah. So the best place is my website. And it's Kerri with a Kerri.
Perfect.
And yeah, there's links to the books on there. There's links to my all my social media, and I love connecting with people. So don't hesitate to reach out for sure.
Well, I will be. My social media, which is only Instagram because I'm lame, definitely gonna find you. You'll see me there. But thank you so much, Liz. Any words of wisdom to wrap up this amazing episode on? Because my mind is kind of blown.
I agree. And now I'm like, I don't read very much. I need both of these books. We want to look inward, right? We want to understand, and it's not always laid out in a way that is helpful. So thank you so much, Kerri. This was really fun. We thank you so much, and your amazingly cool frames. For those who can't see, she's got these super awesome red frames on, red glasses on. And this was just fabulous. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Kerri.
Thank you both so much too. I had a blast, and yeah, would love to just keep going and talking to you forever. So
yeah. I mean, we got to move through the framework. I got to know, how do I get
now we got to do it and come back and talk about our experiences, right?
Right.
I think that is fun. That's what we have to do.
Yeah, for
okay,
sure.
Sold. I'm signing up for that.
Everybody jump on your broomsticks. Next time we're going to have Kerri. We're going to do deeper work. This was so cool. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.